All right, well, my clock says 4 o'clock on the dot, so we'll go ahead and get started. So appreciative of everybody joining us today. This panel came together pretty quickly, and we've got some real-time stories to tell, and appreciative of everybody's time that they've put into making sure this is a productive session today. So what we hope to provide is a platform to learn about the few examples that we're going to showcase today, doing online live proctoring using Zoom. The panelists are going to demonstrate how they've iterated off of a previous example, and they'll likely reference the example they started with. There's going to be some intersections among the different examples, but then also some unique stories around how specifically each individual faculty member accomplishes this. And so my hope is that we'll highlight some of those unique pieces of each of the three, and then we'll be able to point those out in the training materials that we produce afterwards. And ultimately, what I think from what we heard from the panelists yesterday in our dress rehearsal is they really want you to see that this is possible, and that certainly we're trying to do a whole bunch in an unprecedented moment, but they emphasize that it doesn't have to be perfect, and that you know, just trying it and talking with colleagues in a setting like this is definitely a great place to start. So I'm going to welcome the panelists, and we'll shift between them. We've got Dr. Rupak Mahapatra. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that. Mahapatra. He's Professor, Department of Physics and Astronomy. Dr. Jenn Whitfield, Instructional Assistant Professor and Assistant Department Head in the Department of Mathematics. Dr. Alan Demlow, Professor and Associate Head for Operations in the Department of Mathematics. And then Kim Ritchie, Director of Operations for Online Programs, Department of Statistics. And then we're joined by Dr. Debra Fowler, Director of the Center for Teaching Excellence. The process, as I mentioned just a moment ago, for submitting questions, this email address behind me is academicinnovation@tamu.edu. And we will be asking you to submit your questions throughout the panel, and at about 40, we will stop and start to ask those questions to the panelists. If we don't get to your question, we're going to be saving those questions and answering them and getting them through, distributed through our training materials that we'll produce in the next day or so.
Okay.
With that, yes, this session is being recorded, and our intention is to put together some materials to encapsulate kind of the generalized approach to proctoring online via Zoom, and allowing you to fill in details as you make case studies. I'm gonna put a couple people on mute. All right. So before we get started, I want to address the issue of recording with Zoom proctoring sessions. There's been a number of emails that have come through today. There's been a number of emails that have come through over the last week or so, and I think each of the panelists is going to address this to some extent, but I want to try to address this comprehensively and provide a couple of recommendations, and we'll include these in the materials as well. So first of all, and we're talking about recording Zoom proctoring sessions. It's recorded that faculty add verbiage to exam guidelines that gets distributed to students ahead of the exam to disclose that the faculty member and/or TA will be recording the proctored exam. The information should be repeated at the start of the exam once the recording has been turned on. Additionally, when students register for the exam via Zoom, which Rupak is going to describe that approach, you can put a disclaimer that the session will be recorded. And then if the students are recorded and they can be identified, the portion that shows the students would be an educational record under FERPA. And we've got some email traffic right now determining the length of time that those records should be retained, likely for 1 year. But we'll make sure we have clear guidance on that. And then in the case of live online proctoring, the understanding from the examples provided during the exam panel is that only the instructor and/or the TAs will access the recording. I think they'll all speak to that. So with that, I will turn it over to Rupak, and I believe you're going to share your screen and go through a couple of slides.
Okay, so can you see the slideshow?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you a start with an example. That's a picture of one gallery view of an exam we administered on the first day of online exam, online classes. It had about 1,300 students. So you might think that's audacious, but we have been using Zoom for a while as part of my experiment with two broad international collaborations. So it boiled down to getting organized to do this exam, and that with some legwork you can do it, and certainly much more easily for smaller classes. So what I'm going to show you today are some of the big picture ideas, why we do this, how we do this, and how all can you adapt it to your specific situation. So uh, first of all, I don't need to preach that we need to have proctoring to reduce, provide a level playing field. You can look up online with online teaching and giving exams. The cheating level can be high if you're not proctored. So we want to get that order of magnitude reduction in cheating by enabling proctoring. And as you heard, Zoom provides a way to proctor to view the students just like in an exam hall, except of course with limitations. And it's free through Texas A&M's Zoom accounts. So the main idea is that you monitor your student through the webcam and if needed in specific cases with sound. Okay, and what you do is, how do you check the correct student is taking the exam? Just like in an exam hall, you check the ID. Here you have more tools in reality, because you can check the images from the roster that you have access to. You can also limit them to some registered IDs. You can have the net ID authentication. There are multiple ways to ensure that is the right student that's taking the exam. And as I go through this sort of discussions, I think there will be questions at the end. But if I'm going too fast, just raise your hand using the Zoom. Okay. All right. So the actual exam is administered on eCampus. That's how we did it. You can find there are different ways to do it as well. And we did it on eCampus. So the big idea is we administer the exam on eCampus, which is asynchronous from the proctoring through Zoom. Because you have to keep in mind, students are all over the world. They're in rural areas of US with poor internet connectivity. You can't expect a high quality, persistent internet connection for them to be able to take the exam. That's why eCampus works well. Even if the internet connection disappears momentarily, they will not be hurt. They can continue to take the exam. Except your Zoom connection will drop and you'll reconnect, but that's fine. You have to take it as is. And eCampus provides you with the begin and end times, and you can adapt that to disability students as well. So for each student, you can tailor what they see. I mean, they would see the same thing, but how long do they have to take the exam? So there are also other ways. I mean, there are simpler ways. And as I go deeper and deeper into this, you'll see that depending on what your class size is it 20 students, 50, 100, 200? We dealt with 1,300 students. That's sort of on the high end, but there are different levels. If you want to keep it simple, you can also do an all-in-one solution, the administration and proctoring into the Zoom session itself. And of course, all of these things are easier to deal with if you have multiple choice questions. So like freshman classes, like our freshman mechanics and physics, we did that with multiple choice questions. But you do have other options, WebAssign, where you can use the lockdown browser, or you can use Respondus, which is a commercial solution. And it does have the lockdown browser, meaning the students can't do anything else on that computer. And you can also enable integrated web monitoring. So it's all on the same computer. But you just have to keep in mind, lockdown browser does not guarantee that the student can't cheat using a second device. And we are all in lockdown, so students do have access to multiple computers in their home. So that's something to keep in mind. There's no guarantee that they would cheat. They cannot cheat with that. Now, you would also have to keep in perspective that you can't really defeat if someone is really keen on cheating in some way or the other. So you have to keep that in mind. And these are sort of getting through 99% of the students. How do you prevent cheating? All right, so you can also ask the students to proctor through Zoom on their smartphones. So the first example I gave was through their computer. You pop up the Zoom app and you're being monitored on the screen and you work on eCampus while the Zoom is running in the background. But you could also run Zoom in this on your smartphones, and that gives you the best combination because the smartphone can have a better angle to show their workspace, and they can't do anything else on the smartphone because you can use attention tracking feature on Zoom to know when they switch out of the app. So they won't do that. So you're watching their computer, which shows eCampus, you're watching their workspace, and you're monitoring them through the phone. But again, that's a two-device approach. So depending on your need, you may or may not want to do that. So here's an example, just a quick view of, how do you do it through Zoom? If it's a multiple choice question, you can show them the question, they work on it. At the end of the exam, you can do a poll where individually each student puts in the answers to those 8 or 9 questions. That's possible. That could be the simplest way to do it. eCampus, I'm not going to belabor on the eCampus aspect because we have excellent support from eCampus. They will help you set up your exam and you can get all the results. As soon as the students are done, they can get the result if it's a multiple choice question. So that works very well. All right, so in terms of the big picture, how do you organize? Organization is everything, especially if it's a large class. If it's a small class, you can keep it less complex. But typically what you do is you're going to proctor, before you even start proctoring, you have to organize. So for a large class, we had a website where we organized everything, all the important information. Where do the students go to register? What do they do? What are the mechanisms? I encourage you to click on that link and see what that is when you get some time. But that's how we organized. And what it looks like is, look, there's very clear instructions, what students do, what they need to do for each of the section, who their proctor is going to be, so that the students are not confused. There's no guarantee that a couple of students won't do the wrong thing, but you get most of them. And ideally, you want to limit each proctor to something that's comfortable, not 500 students, something like 50. If you can afford to do it, that's great. We didn't have as many TAs, so we ended up with up to three sections, so like up to 66 students per session. It worked fine. The idea is that if you're on your laptop, you'll be able to see 25 webcams. You scroll to the next page, you can see another 25. That's how you do it. All right, so there will be a common set of instructions that will evolve, and there will be an official document on that. But if you want to see something quick, you can click on the link on the previous slide. All right, so how much time do I have?
You have like 1 minute left.
Okay. All right, so now I'm going to just quickly flash to with the big picture gone, the basic settings. The idea is that with the previous page, students go to a page, they register, and they acknowledge by registering their giving consent to being proctored. So that's in the registration form. And they come up with a link. That's what they use to join into the meetings. And all the settings will be provided to you that are the good options for you to do. And once they get on to the proctoring session, the actual exam is on the eCampus. Okay, so that becomes available as scheduled, and they work on it asynchronously without even paying attention that there's a Zoom session going on. So there are many things that we learned, and I'll leave them on the screen, and we can come back to this later. Make sure you provide a frequently asked questions page because there are many, many questions. I don't have webcam, I lost my student ID, I have to use my cell phone as my hotspot, things like that. You can look that up so that everything is organized on one web page where students can access it. We use a few little things like for high stakes exam, you definitely want to proctor as well as you can. So like using a smartphone and enabling attention tracking, you can make sure the students don't cheat and they work on eCampus to reduce the chances of cheating. And then of course there could be a super proctor, like I could jump among all those sessions and make sure the proctors are proctoring well, because they literally need to look at the webcams, not use their phone, not look anywhere else, pay attention to chat windows and things like that. Just remind everyone that they need to dress professionally and they are being recorded, and show something, share something on the screen like the formula sheet if you have one, or any important information that allows you to utilize the attention tracking on Zoom. So that's pretty much the big picture that I wanted to mention. The details will be available in written form. Is that good on time?
Yep. All right, let's switch to Dr. Jenn Whitfield and Dr. Alan Demlow.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I just wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what Rupak said and describe how we in the math department did a few things differently. We did contact Rupak before we did our first proctoring session. We did it for just some makeup exams that we needed. Students had taken an exam prior to spring break, and so there was a group of students who needed to take a makeup exam. So that was our first experience in proctoring, was just through the makeup exams. And there was about 25 students that we proctored that day. We had contacted Rupak prior to that to get his feedback on the experiences and get some ideas on maybe some things that he would change, and definitely what we should do that he thought was good, that he would keep. So we went with the 2-device approach. Rupak had gone with the 1 device. So we did have the students download the Zoom app to their smartphone. And then they logged on through their smartphone to the Zoom session, to the Zoom meeting ID that we had given them. And we used that then to view the student. And I did take a screenshot of one of the students so that you can see the view that you would get in doing it this way. So I'm hoping you can see the screen. Taking the exam. So what you can see is the student we had the student in good view. We had the student's computer in good view so that we could see if they were searching on their computer, or if we just had a better view of what was actually going on, what activity was happening on the computer. And then we had a view of their scratch paper, all of which was to be blank. And we did check that when they checked into the proctoring session. So I thought that this was a good view that you could see, and you get a good student view of what's going on with the students when you're watching them with the smartphone, because they can position it in a different way as opposed to the webcam like mine right now that's attached to the laptop. It's very difficult for me to move that around. The other thing that we could do with the smartphone and running Zoom on the smartphone is if we needed to scan their testing environment a little bit more, we could have them take their smartphone and scan to the right and the left and show if there was anything underneath their desk and that kind of thing. So you can scan the environment a little bit better with the smartphone just because it's detached from the computer. Let's see, another thing that we did a little bit differently was, when we initially did it, we used the waiting room feature in Zoom. What we've learned from that is that we really need to have more rooms in one Zoom session. So we plan to next week implement the use of breakout rooms, and we will have probably 3 to 4 breakout rooms in one Zoom session, and one proctor will be in each of those breakout rooms proctoring about 50 students. We will also add on some additional breakout rooms. So when we configure them, we will configure it so that we only really need 4, but we will configure it with 6 so that we have 2 extra rooms that if we need, we can pull a student into that room without disrupting the other students. Because when we did have them all in one room, sometimes if we had to address something with the student, we had to interrupt and everybody would hear it, and then we'd have to go through text chat or chat through the Zoom interface, which means then they had to get to their phone. So it wasn't as clean and smooth as we would have liked. And we think that using the breakout rooms and adding on a few additional breakout rooms just for some extra virtual space, if you will, to discuss anything with students would be a good idea. One thing too that we did that has been I think very good for another instructor who's doing our differential equations. He is proctoring some quizzes. He's doing the one device approach, and mostly because he doesn't really need them to take the exam online. So they're doing all paperwork. So they do handwritten work, and then they upload that handwritten work back into eCampus. So the one device approach works because he can watch them through that one webcam, and then they're just writing. They don't have to do an electronic submission. But his recommendation, this is JD Kim, he recommends to make sure that the students do a practice assignment where they just, he had them on one page, one piece of paper, just write their name, and then he had them turn over the paper and just draw a picture of themselves and just do a practice assignment. Then he had them scan both of those pages into one PDF.
Excuse me, Jen, that just means you have 30 seconds to wrap up.
Okay, well, I'm about yeah, so it was the devices, the breakout rooms, and then making sure that we ensure a practice assignment were the kind of the things that we changed from Rupak's design.
Great, thank you. We're gonna switch over now to Kim Ritchie. And just a reminder, I think the questions are coming through quite well, but if you have questions, just go ahead and send them to academicinnovation@tamu.edu.
Okay, hi, hopefully my audio is coming across okay. I'm not gonna share my video because my internet's not great where I am, so I'm hoping that the audio comes across. And so today we actually had our very first exams with statistics. Stat 201, we had two sections. Dr. Irma Hernandez ran it, and she, one thing she did differently that was not discussed earlier was she ran a test session, and hers was also synchronous. So she required that her students come during the exam session itself, so during the class time. So they had to be there from 11:10, I believe, to 12:20 or 11:10 to, during the time of the class. And so she did her synchronously. And so on Monday, she had a test run where she required her students to come to Zoom, come do Zoom and to basically do exactly how it would be for the exam. And she said that really helped out because the students got a feel for what they were needed to do, what they needed to do. She also did a one device approach, meaning she made them use their laptops with a webcam, and if they had any issues with that, they could use their cell phone. Her exam was entirely in eCampus, multiple choice, and so she was able to do that, again, straight in eCampus, to where it was timed and it was only available during a certain window. She unfortunately did not have any TAs to help her, so she ended up basically doing a roll call, and as the students said here, their picture popped up and she was able to verify their identity. For the first one, we had 91 students in the class, and for the second one, there were 88. And it took about 20 minutes the first time for checking the 91 students, and then about 15 on the second one because she got good, better at it. I definitely agree with Jenn's assessment on possibly doing breakout rooms and pulling people out. Because it was disruptive having to call out certain people and have them adjust their cameras or have them turn back on their cameras. Several students kept turning off their cameras after they had already been, I guess, checked in. So it was password protected. We did not record. That wasn't a thought when she first did it, so we did not record anything. So we didn't have to give anyone the disclaimer about it being recorded. That's about it. It went really well. I was kind of surprised, to be honest. Going forward, I would definitely recommend using TAs and using the breakout rooms to make it a little bit easier.
Great, thanks. And with that, we'll turn it over to Debra to moderate a discussion among the panelists.
Okay, so first of all, we have a question regarding what led you to your Zoom proctoring solution? And we'll start with Rupak.
Yeah, so like I said, the familiarity with Zoom, that what led us to Zoom as the solution for proctoring, and plus, so the commercial ones like Xaminity, as you see on keepteaching.tamu.edu, with the lockdown globally, that's not available. So it's free and it works. And you can scale it up to a large number of students, so that's why we chose it.
Okay, Jenn, how about you?
So we are trying, really there's three reasons that are larger reasons for us to do the Zoom proctoring. And one is that we really feel like the grade still has to have some correlation with the learning objectives and the amount or the percent of learning objectives that the students attained in the course. The other one is we really feel like if we're giving the student, college credit for a math class and they're earning that college credit, we need to be diligent and attentive to that. That's the person and that's the student that's doing the work, that we are giving credit to the person who is putting the time and effort and work into getting that college credit. And then we're in a little bit, I think, more unique situation than maybe some other departments, because if a student is taking a test for Math 151, the next follow-up course is Math 152. And so I think we're doing, we need to departmentally make sure that the students who are going to the next follow-up course are going to that course with skills that will help prepare them for success in that course, and that they are not cheating their way into it, or we're not eliminating, but reducing the opportunities for cheating to try and just increase the integrity there.
Okay, and Kim, what led you to the Zoom proctoring solution?
It does the job. It does exactly what we needed to do. We're able to view the student's camera and their workspace, and it kind of gave us that means to do what we need to do if we need to proctor the exams. And it's free for university, so it's there.
Great, thanks. So Jenn, how are you accomplishing the same or different learning outcomes as you did in your face-to-face courses, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so it allows you to kind of do the same thing, right? And so that the tests, we feel like we can come up with similar test questions. We can still make sure that the students are the ones that are doing the work for those test questions, and we're still assessing the same knowledge that we would in a face-to-face class, because we can view them in a video setting.
Okay. And Alan, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so how are students navigating the technology setup that's required of Zoom in the proctoring solution?
So I've talked to several people who have implemented Zoom proctoring. We actually got into this through a contact I had at the University of California, San Diego, who had proctored a 700 student calculus exam at the end of their winter quarter using Zoom. And then I've talked with Rupak and some people in my own department. And I've been surprised at how few students have had any problems with the technology. I think less than 0.5%. So just a handful of students have had any struggles. And with a little bit of help and flexibility on the instructor's part, I think all those issues have been resolved.
Wonderful. Okay, so for Rupak again, how are TAs involved in the Zoom proctoring solution?
Yes. So in our freshman mechanics, the course, we had more than a dozen TAs. So we distributed the proctoring load equally among all the instructors and the TAs. And we trained them so that they knew exactly what's going on, what to do. It was also important to get the TA's feedback on the exam, because when you have a proctor, you're assuming certain level of familiarity with the exams. Otherwise, they would tell the students the wrong thing, the wrong explanation. So that was important for us. We had them take the exam, we made sure they were familiar and they were at the equal footing as the instructors.
Okay, and Jenn, for math, are TAs involved, and if so, how?
Yes, they are, and that's very much how Rupak described it. So we'll have about 50 to 60 students that the TAs will have to proctor. And then we'll have the instructor floating around in the breakout rooms, kind of proctoring the proctors. I thought that was a good advice and suggestion that Rupak had given us as well. And then we will have, for any handwritten grade or handwritten assignments, the TAs will also help grade those. So they'll serve as proctors and graders for both.
Okay, great. So one of the questions that's recently come up is, how are you providing the opportunity for students to review their exams individually after the fact to see what they have missed and perhaps give them any feedback?
Right, so that's very important. So what we do is just like in a physical exam, after the exam, we post the solution online for students to see what they had done and what they made wrong. on eCampus, the nice thing is if you have a multiple choice question, they immediately know their scores as soon as the exam ends, which is put much less burden on the instructor. You have to do some initial work to get the solutions in and make sure they're correct. And so students get the feedback immediately in that case. Sometimes the student will come back and say, I thought I had put in a different answer, but the answer, I didn't get right for that question. So then you have to go back. eCampus has tons of data, activities, what they put in, how much time they spend, how many times they change the answer. So that's how we give them feedback on a case-by-case basis when they were uncertain that what they thought they'd chosen was the one we think they had chosen.
Okay. All right, so then the question to wrap it up, and we'll have each of you go through. We can start with Kim. What advice do you have for faculty who are still deciding what to do with exams as teaching transitions to this new online environment here at Texas A&M?
I would start with what outcome do you want? Kind of what are you looking to get out of the students and the course? Look at that first. And then look at the options that you have to do that and talk to other people. Definitely coordinate with people in your department or outside your department who have similar issues and work with them. And the technology's there and go with it. I think just do it. And it's not going to go perfectly. I think it's already been discussed, but just try it out. And I think it's a lot easier than people will think.
Okay, Alan?
Sure. So when we started the transition to online teaching this semester, of course, it was very chaotic and sudden for everybody. And I quickly realized that this was going to be a big problem for our department because we proctor so many students. So I focused on two questions. The first one is, should we do it? And I quickly decided, yeah, we needed a proctor for the reasons that have been discussed. And I think it also sends a message to the students that we aren't just going through the motions, we still really care what they learn. And I think that's an important message to send to them. Then I asked, can we do it? And I talked to colleagues elsewhere who made clear that, yeah, this is challenging, but it can be done. It works surprisingly well. So at that point, it became just a matter of deciding we can do it, we should do it, just do it, let's do it. So that's my advice.
All right, Jen, anything to add for Matt?
I mean, the only other thing I would add is, don't be afraid to practice. So go ahead and, get your plan down and then call in some other colleagues and you guys kind of have a practice Zoom meeting and see how your ideas work. I think definitely what the others have said, work with colleagues, and then for sure, don't expect it to be perfect. So no, we're not going to get 100% of the students that are not cheating, but for the vast majority of them, we will help them with academic integrity. And I think that they do want it. So don't be afraid to work with others and practice before you just try it out.
Okay, and how about Rupak? Any last words of wisdom for these faculty?
No, I mean, the main thing is, let's look at our strengths as faculties. We are very good at organizing ourselves, our students, our TAs. What we could be lacking could be the technology, and that probably is the thing that scares many people. But given some help from the CTE and other colleagues and other faculties, it's certainly doable. And as was discussed, it's not hard. You just have to try it out and go for the simplest solution that you can live with for your actual course. So that's my advice. And this is a great. Students are not the ones that are afraid of the technology, like Alan said. So it makes our job much more easier. Just go with it and ask for help when you need.
Okay, back to you, Jocelyn.
Great, thanks. So we've had several questions come through. We'll go through one round and see where we get, and then circle back if we need to. So the first question is to anybody who wants to answer this. How wide is the time window for asynchronous exams? And if the window is too long, have you examined student performance as a function of time the students take the exam?
So I can start with the large 1,300 student exam. So on the eCampus, you're giving them same amount of time as in physical space, but of course you can change that. Let's say our exam was 1 hour, 30 minutes. So on eCampus, the exam starts exactly at 7:30, 9 p.m. they need to submit. Otherwise, they don't get points. So, but you can be more lenient and give 10 extra minutes. That's separate from the Zoom proctoring where, you need to add 30 minutes before the exam starts so you can get everybody organized, and also add 30 minutes into the scheduling so that in case there are questions, so if students want some feedback or want to discuss something, you have that window. But no, on eCampus, it's asynchronous. You really don't need to add 30 minutes to a 1.5 hour exam. Probably 10 minutes is more than enough.
Great. So we've got a couple questions for Jen and Alan. Some of these I think you answered as you went, but we'll go ahead and have you expand a little bit on how the students use Zoom on their phones while taking an exam on eCampus on their computers. I think your image illustrated well where the phone sits, but if you want to provide any more context on that. And then is it possible to share this example photo to create instructions on how we proctor the exam? And then with this question, what is the max number of students per breakout room?
Okay, so the first one, I guess, was using two devices and the telephone or the smartphone as the camera, right, where we're viewing the student. It worked out real seamlessly. I liked it a lot using Zoom on the smartphone. The students just download the app. I do have explicit instructions written up for that to give the students so that they can do a practice run before they come into the exam room during the exam time. And so then they were using eCampus. On the particular example that I was showing you, they weren't necessarily using eCampus that day. They used eCampus to download the exam. But then the rest of the exam, it was handwritten and then they re-uploaded it. Moving forward, we will use eCampus or WebAssign to do multiple choice or fill in the blank, possibly some file upload questions where eCampus or WebAssign is going to store all of the exam information. So we chose the two device on that one so that they could work on their computer using eCampus or WebAssign, and then we could view them through the Zoom app on their smartphones. Remind me the second one.
Can you, would you be willing to share the image that shows how to proctor?
Yeah, so I got to get permission from the student. I did blur out the face, so hopefully you wouldn't be able to recognize the student, but we are working on getting permission from the student to release that one. And then the third question, Jocelyn, I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you can talk about the max number of students per breakout room that you find feasible.
So for breakout rooms, we're just going to run about, for one proctor to be in that room, and we really feel like 50 to 60 students per proctor is very feasible. The breakout rooms will hold more than that. But for them to really be able to watch the students, the check-in process and making sure that the student who's taking the exam is the student who is enrolled in the course, and then checking their scratch paper to make sure they don't have anything written on their scratch paper, and then just doing a real quick environment check with their cell phones. That's going to take some time, and so we're hoping that 50 to 60 students will be doable for one proctor and won't take up too much time during that check-in process.
Great. And with that, do you pre-assign these groups into breakout sessions when you're setting up the meeting, or is this something you do on the fly with the tool in Zoom?
Yes. The plan is to pre-assign them alpha order. So, and if one class, let's just say, has 120 students, then we'll partition them into 3 groups of 40, and we will pre-assign the breakout rooms. And so then when the students come in, they will go into the breakout room with their assigned proctor. And then the instructor will be in the main room kind of facilitating anybody that doesn't get into the right breakout room for whatever reason. So we're having the instructor just float around to help monitor and manage the breakout rooms, where the TAs will be in the breakout rooms doing the actual proctoring.
Great. And we have some documentation on how to pre-assign breakout groups, if that's not familiar to you, and we'll make sure we include that in the follow-up materials. Okay, the next question is for Rupak. Is there a concern with students seeing each other's video during a proctor session?
Right, so I had one example of what not to do. So one student had the webcam directly looking at the, the worksheet, so which could lead to copying, right? And so that's why you want to avoid that. The simple way of avoiding, the ideal way to do it is, let's say you share something on the screen. So that automatically what it does is it allows you to do attention tracking, as well as they can't see anybody else's videos. So that you don't have the cross feed. For example, if one of us is doing something with a sheet of paper, everybody else can see it. So that's how you can prevent students from seeing each other's work very closely. But if you do see something, then just remind the student, move your camera away or something like that.
Great. And this question is probably to all three groups. Is it reasonable to require students to have 2 devices? And is that the norm? And perhaps you can speak to some of those outlier cases that you've had to accommodate.
If it's a high stakes exam, like I was saying in my presentation, you do want to proctor through the cell phone. And these days, majority of them have cell phones or smartphones, so that should be easier to implement. But there's no guarantee. There could be one-off student who doesn't have, but then you make that exception and have them be proctored to the, through the computer. But that allows you the maximum ability to monitor if you use the cell phone for Zoom and computer for eCampus or other.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I want to add one little piece. So we haven't had any issues yet with requiring 2. I'm sure we will run into students where that's not going to be feasible, and then we will provide alternative accommodations. We could do it with 1. We can put them in a breakout room with just 1 other person where they're looking at things. So we're looking at different alternatives for students who aren't going to have 2. We feel pretty strongly that the majority of students will have 2 devices. Could be a smartphone and an iPad or something of that nature. One of the benefits of 2 devices, and kind of addressing the question before about other students seeing other students taking the test, is when they have it on their smartphone, when they've got Zoom loaded on their smartphone and they're using their smartphone to get on to Zoom, number 1, they don't see as many students in their smartphone screen just because it's smaller. So then the number of students that they can see is smaller. And the other thing is the smartphone is not what they're really focusing on. That's what we're using to see them. The focus for the student is the second device, which is the device that they're using to get into eCampus or whatever the other platform may be.
Kim, any more to add to that?
No, just in the one we did today with about 200 students, they all used their webcams on their laptops or devices or their computer. And we only had 2 of those that had issues, and they used their phones for that. I don't think the instructor was as worried about them seeing, because she had them minimize the Zoom window while she was watching them, so they weren't able to see. They were basically using eCampus, but there were only 2 of those 200 that had issues and used their cell phones.
Right, we had 2 to 3 among our 1,300. I thought this is a good point to remind everyone that we have to be very sensitive when student says he or she doesn't have something. We have to take it at the face value.
Thank you. The next question has to do with, this is to Rupak probably, and maybe others can answer. Do you have feedback on how instructors can ensure there isn't someone else in the room just off camera providing assistance to the student taking the exam?
Yeah, so first of all, the students view this as a huge deterrent to cheating. So normally nobody would even try. And second of all, when the proctor sees somebody else or hears somebody else in the room, they can ask the student to show around, even if it's a webcam or a cell phone, like Jenn was saying, so you can monitor the room. We did have a consent, we had informed the students every once in a while, a TA, when there's a suspicion, they can unmute one of the students, listen into the ambient noise. They were aware of that. We didn't see a single case where it looked like anybody was trying to cheat.
Right. But what do you do if a student, and this could be to anybody, what do you do if a student takes the exam outside of being proctored? Do you dock points? Guessing it's meaning starting the exam in eCampus.
Right. I mean, it's a very, very difficult question, right? So we didn't have an entire blackout of anyone, but students had disappeared for a few minutes. They lost connection. They said that they had lost connection. And they asked if they could have extra time. We reminded them the eCampus was asynchronous. They should have been working on it. And we did check that they were actually working on it, because you look at all the records that is available to you.
Anybody else want to speak to that one? All right.
It goes back to, like, you know, it's not going to be perfect. You know, there might be 1 or 2 students who lose a connection. We try to get them back on as quickly as we can. We're trying to, for the vast majority of the students, deter them from any sort of academic dishonesty.
Great. And Zoom bombing has been a topic this week. We are hearing less of it as the week goes on, and I think people are taking care to set up meetings with more security and provide passwords or waiting rooms. And then there's some in-meeting features now where you can put people on hold or stop screen sharing. Has that been a problem in the exams to date?
No, not for us. I mean, even for our lecture, we don't allow unfettered access. We require registration, or you can even make it very restrictive. Only with tamu.edu net ID they can join in. So that's, yeah, I think people learned the lessons very quickly and used some sort of authentication.
All right, next question. I think this is probably to Kim. But maybe to Jenn as well. Is it possible to see all students' camera slash screens at once when they are put into individual breakout rooms? Can you speak a little bit to how you're able to see the group?
Well, for us, you couldn't see all of them. So in the one that we had 91, we did not use breakout. So all 91 were in the same grouping. But how you can see your screen now, right now, like I have 20 on my screen, and I can very easily use the arrows to kind of cycle through. So what we did was just we kept cycling through those either 20 or 25, however many, I guess, depending on your screen size. And we just kind of cycled through and eyeballed the students as we were going, and just did that. And, you know, going back to if there's someone in the room, we could see people talking. We couldn't, you know, obviously hear them because they were muted, but we could see them talking. So we would call them out and say, you know, hey, make sure, this was before the exam started, of course, but we said, hey, make sure that there's no one in there with you, please, you know, be alone. So it was easy to see that on the screen, and we were able to cycle through. And my bandwidth is not great, and I was still able to see the 20 people at one time and cycle through it.
Great. Thank you. Rupak, there's been a couple of questions about the registration process and how you're able to alter that text, and we can put some training materials together if we need to show people how to do that. But do you want to talk a little bit about how you did that and then integrated this consent information?
Yeah, so when you set up the questions in the meeting, you can make a custom question. So I basically took the example of what, you know, you consent to being monitored through video and audio, type in your name to give your consent, you know, the usual stuff. You can do that in a custom question. So I can send you the instructions. And that's important because that's what happened at Berkeley. Well, there are a few things, right? So, you know, you can't expect everyone to have high-speed internet connection. You can't expect everyone to be in the same time zone. Those are things we need to keep in mind as we schedule our exam as well. Don't set it for like 8 o'clock Central Time. That's, many of the students would be from California.
All right, the next question, there's a couple questions that I'll answer for the group. There's a question about Lockdown Browser, and we are currently testing Respondus Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. Those are two different tools. I think Respondus Lockdown Browser was the tool that was talked about today. And it's my understanding, Rupak, you don't recommend layering that on top of the live proctoring we are working on testing those, and when we get the clear to release those, eCampus will make an announcement. The Respondus monitor tool would be in competition with Zoom Live proctoring. So it would just be adding on Respondus lockdown browser, correct?
Right. I mean, it's basically you have Respondus lockdown browser, which and then also the monitor. Yeah, that's all in one. So you don't need two devices. It's one device does everything. That's very flexible, right? So because literally, because the same app, they can view your webcam even when your browser is locked down. So if you do have a good deal and make that available to the entire community, I think that's something that's nice to have. It's not in competition with Zoom, because if you can provide a simple solution to all the faculties, a lot of them would use it instead of doing a lot of different things, because that could be integrated into your LMS system. So that's why it's helpful.
Okay, here's a question about managing noise levels, so that I guess how are any of the groups managing the noise levels so that the faculty member can hear the students' surroundings while also minimizing noise distraction for students? I'm not sure if we touched on audio yet.
So you'd actually mute them. I mean, other people should speak first.
We did the same thing. We required them to be muted, and the only time they spoke up was when they were called on.
Even if just one person is not muted, it's very distracting for others.
Yeah, and I think that's why Jenn has advocated the use of breakout rooms, so that if you need to talk to a student, you can pull them into the breakout room and talk to them there instead of having it be audible to the whole group.
Yeah.
Right, and then the next question is, it's kind of long, so I'm just gonna read the whole thing. So on the 2-device option, the proctor is checking that what is happening on the screen of the computer is the same. I'm sorry, let me start over. So if you use the 2-device option, is the proctor checking that what is happening on the screen of the computer is the same that the cell phone is pointing to avoid that someone else is using eCampus for that student and sharing the screen? Or with both cameras, the student should show his or her face first before sharing eCampus. So can someone talk through this scenario for us?
Well, so I haven't thought necessarily about somebody just being on eCampus and acting like they're on eCampus while somebody else is really taking their exam for them. I think that's how I interpreted this question. I can say that we would be relying on the fact that to get into eCampus, you're going to have to give somebody your credentials, and I'm not exactly sure if you can be taking 2 exams at the same time. So when we did it before, or when Catherine Bollinger and Vanessa Kaufelt did it for the makeup exams in our department, they had students go in and download the test from eCampus, so they weren't even able to see the test unless they knew they were in eCampus and downloading it. So we didn't specifically check for that to make sure that somebody else was not taking the exam for them. We were just looking to see if on their screen, if it appeared to be that they were in eCampus.
Great. Okay, here's a logistics question that I think, Jen, you spoke to yesterday when we talked. So do you recommend using the Aggie ID or Howdy roster to confirm the students?
So we are going to move forward with the Howdy roster, the image roster in Howdy. When my colleagues did it before in doing the makeup exam, they did look at the student's ID. We're going to start running into kind of a limitation with time constraints, because we are constrained right now to give exams during the times that the students would normally have taken it in class. So if they are teaching on a Tuesday, Thursday, we're confined right now to a 75-minute time period, just like they would have in a face-to-face setting, or 50 minutes if it's on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So our biggest challenge right now is going to be sure to get everybody in and checked in and still have the student get enough time to take the test. So the check-in process needs to be quick and efficient. And we think that the image roster that's given in Howdy, which is actually the picture that's on their ID anyway, is the most efficient way to do that.
Great, Thank you. And then probably to Kim, what do you recommend if you don't have TAs for proctoring? Should the person asking the question make people record themselves and send the video recording in?
Let's see, first off, like today, the professor did not have any TAs. I sat in because I wanted to first off see how it went and to give her a little bit of help, but she did okay by herself doing the proctoring. And again, it was because using the webcam, she just cycled through, we were able to cycle through, so I saw that. You can also have students record. So I work primarily with our distance ed, our master's program. And so for proctors there, one of the options that we had used was Remote Proctor, which was a third party, and they would record the students and then we'd watch it later. And so that is definitely an option. Again, it takes a little bit of, I guess, technology wherewithal on the student to be able to record themselves. That is an option that you could do.
Yeah, so, and also I noticed Andy Tag is on, and so Andy, I think, did it he proctored 300 students in, I think, one of his most recent exams or quizzes, some assessment on his own. And it is just that from when I talked with Andy, it was, you know, do the best you can, and you've got some form of proctoring and you're just continuing to scroll through. It's a lot to scroll through, but Andy did do it, and he may, you know, be able to even help some people with that.
Great. Well, the last question that we have is asking where you can get more resources on teaching with Zoom. So let me share my screen really quickly. Oh, I'm sharing my screen, right? Are you all seeing Keep Teaching? Yes.
Yes.
So this is the central hub for information for faculty. We've got a companion guide for students. It's keeplearning.tamu.edu. And right here on the main menu, if you go down to additional, if you click additional resources, it will take you to Zoom trainings, getting started with Zoom, and then teaching with Zoom. You can watch an on-demand training, or you can also, we have several resources below here, step-by-step guides, as well as some nice materials from Zoom with short videos on how to use features like breakout rooms, the attention tracking feature that Rupak mentioned. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't, to take a look at these resources. We're also putting together quite a few short 2-minute videos on our YouTube channel. And I believe if you just look for academic innovation, TAMU academic innovation on YouTube, you'll find those. There's probably 8 or so of those right now, and we're putting those up daily. And then also pushing those through social media on Twitter and Instagram at @TAMU_innovations. So with that, we will wrap things up. We'll be sure to get questions, answers, follow-up materials. All of that will be on Keep Teaching. There's an exam link already, and so we'll just continue to populate that. And really appreciate the participation today. We had over 200 participants, which I think is fantastic. And certainly the innovation and ingenuity of the panelists who have given a lot of thought and effort into ensuring academic integrity in online exams, and also to Debra Fowler for participating and co-leading this session, so that we're really focused on the student learning outcomes and really ensuring that we're doing the best we can during these times. So thank you all, and we'll get these materials up as soon as we can, and hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.